Welcome to our full-time missionary training videos. These videos are designed to help you get a firm, broad understanding of what it means to become full-time missionaries in the foreign lands. These videos will be a massive blessing and it will help you get started right in the mission field. Please subscribe to this YouTube channel because what we're going to do is be continually uploading content that will be valuable to you to help you in your work in the foreign lands. Also, if you're somebody that's wanting to get into the mission field, but you really don't know how and you need help, please contact us. There's a description in this video and we provide the link to do so. We would love to walk you through the process. Also, we have a Facebook group. That link is in there as well. That Facebook group is missionaries around the world collaborating and networking together, strengthening one another in the work that we're doing in the foreign lands. And then one final note, this whole entire series is based off of a book, Pursuing the Call, with Danny Lamastra. He's a missionary in El Salvador. I highly recommend you getting a copy of that. And again, thank you so much for being here. We pray that these videos are a blessing to you. Thank you. Hey, Marcy, thank you so much for joining us. Your name's Marcy Finn, and I just want to introduce everybody to you. You were a missionary here in Honduras, and you work closely with HFMM. You were in the missionary care department, and in many cases, you kept missionaries from being burned out and going back home. You brought a lot of encouragement to the missionary body down here in Honduras. And I believe in my heart that you saved a lot of ministries and you helped them continue on. But today you are back in the United States and your ministry is called Answer the Call Ministry. So more or less, you're still doing the same work and you're looking for opportunities. You're working on your podcast and you're working through some other opportunities, looking for seminars and so forth to advance your work as far as in ministry care. And today we're going to be talking about setting priorities. So thank you for joining on this Zoom call.
It's great to be here.
And, this outline actually came from you. I know a lot of the outline was developed off of Pursuing the Call book, but I wanted more content and you blessed me with this wonderful outline. And this is one thing that you have taught a lot of missionaries. And, it's like missionaries have this propensity to get to the mission field. They feel like they have to perform. They feel like they have to, get so many salvations. They have to report back to home. And then all of a sudden, guess what? Family gets neglected. Marriage gets neglected. The kids get neglected. I mean, so many things get neglected while they're trying to do something that they feel like is right in their life. But in all actuality, they're kind of hindering what God wants to do in their lives in the mission field. So if you could just, share with us about this.
Sure. I think setting priorities is really important. And we have it as part of our missionary orientation. What I wish I would have known, if somebody had said this is okay, or it's okay to do it this way, sometimes missionaries need permission. Of course, because of that, works or trying to get accomplishments or get so much done. It's great. Setting priorities is great for establishing boundaries, for avoiding burnout. So there's many different areas that it's for. And I think a lot of times we know what they are. We hear it, maybe we even preach it or teach it, but to actually do it is where it's hard. So number one, you put God first. Number two, you put yourself first. Second, you put yourself second. And that sometimes has a little bit of a problem with theology. We're supposed to be last. And I'm not talking about serving. When you're serving, you serve other people, you're served last. So I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about taking care of yourself. If that's short time for yourself. And I know you have a session on self-care. And then it's your family, it's your spouse and then your kids, and then it's ministry or work. But I think also within each of those priorities, there's priorities.
Yeah.
So even when you get to the work ministry component, God should be first. When you get to the spouse component, God should be first. Family, God should be first. So it's there's more, it's how are we setting it up? I think the difficulty is we're going to spend most of our time in the work ministry slot. So, how do we make sure that God is first? I'm taking care of myself. I got my relationship with my spouse, my relationship with my kids. And then I'm doing this thing called work and ministry, which does really take up the whole time. How do I put God first in that? How do I organize even my time within that ministry to have my priorities right? So it can tend to be a big thing that I think people need to think through.
Yes. And, we did cover the one on spiritual health, and Danny and I talked about that. But I think, as you're saying, our relationship with God is the first and most important. And I've learned myself, I've been a Christian for over 30 some years, been involved in ministry and so forth. But what I've always learned is that if you don't have the right relationship with God, it's going to hinder you in all other areas of life. And, what you're chasing after, you think you're going to go build this great ministry that's going to touch thousands for Jesus. Well, guess what? If you don't have the right relationship with God, it's going to be built on the wrong premises. It's not going to have the strength that you thought it was. And it can all come crashing down. And see, I think sometimes people will wake up and say, I don't got time to pray. I don't got time to read the word because I got to go over here. I got to go over and do this. And I see that so much in ministry here that unfortunately they don't realize that in the quiet time, in the seeking of God, in the time of reading his word, in the time of prayer, God's going to speak to you. God's going to lead and guide you. He's going to guide you in the right direction. And you're not going to be chasing after so many things that you feel like you need to be chasing after.
Right. And I think there's so many things in that, because when we start to think that we can kind of outwork Jesus, or outwork God, like God took a day of rest. Jesus, I know it's like one sentence every so often here and there, he went aside to pray. Like, if people don't understand that all of ministry flows out of that relationship, your relationship with your spouse and your relationship with your kids flows out of that relationship with Jesus. Like, so if we don't have that, then if we're a works-based ministry as far as physical works, meaning I'm not preaching and doing whatever, then you're going to replace relationship with those works, your service. Mm-hmm. And then if we are in the preaching end where, hey, I'm preparing messages and doing whatever, you're going to be talking about something you're not in a relationship. Like, you have to make sure your relationship with God is separate than your ministry time. Absolutely. And then I think we've heard so many times that you don't prepare the message, you prepare the messenger. And so how can we be out there serving? We've sacrificed everything to serve God. How can we be doing that, but not talking to him, not listening to him? It's from him that we're going to get the strength. It's from him that we're going to know even what we're supposed to do that day. It's from him that we're going to know when we need to do something differently. And so if we're not in that relationship, I think we kind of lose sight of why we're doing what we're doing. Yeah. And that could bring us to a really dangerous spot.
Yeah. One thing that, I'm 53 years old, and one thing I remember as a young kid is seeing my dad rest. And, you'd be like, oh, what are you talking about? That I have never forgotten that. And, I admire my dad for so many things. But one thing that he has taught me, and, I've been a business owner, I've owned several businesses and so forth. I've always learned how to rest. And it wasn't, to, be lazy. And that was never my father. My dad was a very hard worker. But see, my dad knew when to hit the switch. And I think that's the thing that we all have to understand, that we got to know when to hit the switch. And that's one thing that I believe that I do really well. It's like, for example, just this video, it's like 6 something right now. And I hit the switch before we did this Zoom call. I said, I'm going to just sit down for an hour and a half and just hit the switch and just relax. I'm not going to focus on anything. And I watched a TV series. There's nothing wrong with that. Yeah. Some people would say, you mean you took a break like at 4 o'clock today? Yes, I took a break at 4 o'clock today. There's nothing wrong with that. To me, I think that we should be very careful and realizing that sometimes you can work so much that basically you're just developing yourself into a burnout, and
Yeah.
then you're not going to be effective. So, I've just always been really good at just knowing, hey, I need that 10 minutes. I need that 15 minutes, So I just myself just know when I need to hit the switch, and either I'm going to rest myself by reading a book or watching TV or spend some time with my wife. I don't have any kids here, but I think I do real well in that. And I want to encourage missionaries that it's not always about chasing ministry. Sometimes you just got to be able to rest, and you talked about that.
Right.
Go ahead.
The priority of God is resting in God. That's one aspect. Then the self-care of resting just to take time for yourself, and resting and enjoying your spouse and your family or others, friends, other missionaries, people in the community. I grew up the opposite, actually. My dad was always working. My mom was always working. I didn't think they'd ever retire, but they finally did. So it was the opposite. But then I married somebody who, same thing, like when, as a school teacher, a lot of school teachers bring their work home. I was just amazed. My husband would stay 1 hour later at work to get all of his work done. And when he came home, he was home. And I think my kids are going to grow up with the same thing, like seeing him rest, like they see him with his God time. They see him working hard. They see him also taking a break. They see him, spending time with his spouse. They see him, he spends time with them. So, it's all of that. And I think when we don't do that for ourselves, we start to judge other people like, oh my gosh, how could you watch that TV show? My gosh, how could you go on a vacation with your family? Aren't you missionaries? How could you do that? It's like, are you not understanding like the priorities are? You want, I always put it like this. If you work for a company or your parent works for a company and they spend all their time there and they come home, who do the kids hate? Who's the spouse hate? That company. Well, think about it. What happens when you become a missionary and you're 60 hours, 80 hours a week? Who do the spouse and the kids hate? Well, who's your boss? God. So you're, by spending time with God, you'll learn how to represent God well. And he is about relationships. And that's one thing I love about being having been in Honduras. They're relationship oriented. So you can learn about a God who's relationship minded and seeing it in a different way, and then bring that into your other relationships.
Yeah. I was just counseling a missionary that left the mission field here recently from Africa. And he was sharing with me how his parents were missionaries in Africa and they got divorced. And it all came down to the priorities. More or less, he just said his father would obsess over the work of missions, and he would neglect his family so much so that literally it drove him and his wife to divorce. So, it's so important that we examine this and that we encourage missionaries that, your marriage is so important, and you have to guard and protect your marriage. You may have not even done it prior to mission field. I've always been really good about guarding our marriage, and taking that time and going on dates and going on vacations. One thing I did want to point out, you said something about someone to say, you're a missionary, you take vacations. Yeah. Guess what? She wasn't joking. There are actually people that will think that missionaries should not take vacations. I have talked to missionaries. They posted vacation photos on their Facebook page and people mocked them. Like, how dare you go to the beach? It was, I think, in La Ceiba or something like that. How dare you go to the beach and take a 3-day vacation? It was just, people actually think that. So
Jesus went to a wedding. He went to the sea. I mean, like, he wasn't 24/7 doing ministry,
So I mean, it just is so important that you have to make sure that you're maintaining your marriage, you're maintaining your relationship with your children, you're taking time to say, no more ministry today. We're going to focus on family. We're going to focus on marriage. We're going to focus on the kids today. Kids, where do you want to go today? Go to the mall, go out to eat or wherever. I don't know where you're going to be at in the mission field, but it's important to do these.
You have to get creative. So I know there were times, we had 4 kids on the field. They're little, we couldn't find a babysitter. We happen to have a basement, which is unusual for Honduras, but you set up dinner for the kids, they go to their rooms. We went downstairs, had a candlelit dinner. Like, we could leave them in the house, lock up, and walk down the road to the pond or whatever, so, and then with the kids, you can go on a picnic, you can go on a hike. I mean, talk about all the waterfalls and different things in another country, if you don't live near the city. Definitely, which people don't think of, to bring down the movies you like. I mean, now you can get Netflix subscription stuff you couldn't get before, bring down books, get Kindles, bring the board games, like set things in place so that you're a success with that. You can even get books now. My coworker was telling me about books on dates, and you open up the book and you scratch it off, and it tells you what you have to do for a date that night. Yeah. And then they take a Polaroid picture and add it to the album. And so you have to be creative, but there can be a way to do that on the field when either A, you don't have money, or B, you're in the middle of nowhere. Like there's a way if it's a priority for you.
Yeah. And, one thing I do want to say this, because you mentioned money, I think you need to prioritize the money as well, because I think sometimes missionaries have a propensity, they get $1,000 offering. Well, they're going to be looking for the first opportunity where they're going to spend $1,000. There's nothing wrong with taking $100 yourself and saying, look, we're going to spend this on the family. I mean, I don't, not all missionaries are set up exactly the same, but I'm just saying, for me, there's nothing wrong with taking $100 and say, well, we're going to devote this on going out to dinner, and we're going to spend the day with the kids. There's nothing wrong with that. But see, some missionaries feel so guilty that they're going to actually take some type of funds from the ministry to spend it on themselves. I mean, there's nothing wrong with it.
Yeah, it is hard because you see so much need, and you can feel guilty thinking, even what you're buying for groceries is more than maybe your neighbor has, even what you're eating, even the fact that you have a car, and you could spend all your time feeling guilty about that. Or you could just budget in, what do you think, a certain amount per month, and save it up. Or like you're saying, as long as it's not a designated money for a project or whatever, it's just an unexpected offering. And I think sometimes some people nowadays are getting better at, hey, here's $100 just for you and your family, like hopefully we can get word out there too, to pastors, whoever, that how about if you just give them the freedom to do that, but it's just, you got to make it that priority in there.
Exactly. Now, this wasn't really in the outline, but one thing that I kind of thought about as we were talking here is, why is there pressures in life, and why are there priority issues? And the reason why I'm saying this is, I'm like, my mom, when I grew up as a kid, she had these notepads around the house, and she would write down everything. She would schedule everything, and it just rubbed off on me. And I am just like Mr. Organization. And I believe in my heart that a lot of pressures come in life because people are, one, not setting priorities properly, and then two, they're not organized. They're not organizing their ministry. They're not organizing their personal lives. They're not organized at all. And everything is about hit shooting.
I knew that I probably had a tendency to be a workaholic because of the upbringing that I had. But there was a point in ministry where I felt like I wasn't doing anything, because sometimes the errand day takes so long, and you're like, man, I feel like I should be doing more ministry because, Tuesday I have to go to the bank, and I have to go to the grocery store, and it takes so long. And I just feel like everything takes so much more time. And I'm kind of like you. So I created a chart, and I charted out my hours of my day, and I put in, I had things that I wanted to do that weren't getting done. And so this is a little bit of priorities within your ministry. Set up what you want to do per the week. I actually read a pastoral blog or website that said, for pastors, after you come for the weekend, usually they take that Monday off. But really, you should dive right into the beginning of the week with your hardest things, like preparing message and doing all that, and then trickle down through the rest of the week, scheduling lightly in when you're meeting with people or counseling people, and then take your break on Friday and Saturday. So even within that, so I started to map out, okay, I want to communicate with my supporters. I'm going to do that from 8 to 9. I'm making up the times right now, but you get it. And then I'm going to, Tuesday is just going to be errand day. Like that's just what it's going to be. And then I'm going to prepare workshops. And then I'm going to contact 3 missionaries and do interviews. And I had it mapped out. And by the end of the week, I was like, oh my gosh, I am working a 40-hour or more than a 40-hour week when I'm still a wife and a mom, and I'm taking that errand day. So it was good to see that I was getting done a lot of things, but then it also showed me where maybe I need to allot more time, or I could be even more specific to get some goals done that were just kind of sliding by the wayside. If you don't have the pressure of the workshop coming up, it's harder to like make yourself prepare or research or study more things on how to help missionaries or stuff. Well, when you start to prioritize that, and even within that, putting God first, like in ministries, I don't know why ministries, when they get together, they can't even spend Monday, like do devotions together as a team, like as your staff. Pray. Are you praying together? And I think if we set aside time like that in our own lives, and then also in ministry, we would actually have more time than we think, or God would just allow more to get done because we are putting them first.
Well, I think the thing that I notice in myself is when I do prioritize and I do plan, what happens is my mind is so at peace and relaxation, because when you're not planning, when you're not prioritizing, your mind is constantly racing, wondering what you're not getting done. And so when you actually take that 10 minutes, that 5 minutes each day to just kind of go over your schedule, maybe you have to move some things around. What happens is you go throughout your whole entire day with just total peace and comfort, because you're getting things done. So I just think it's so important that missionaries, because I have a friend in the United States. He has actually a missionary in Peru now, and he was a very successful businessman, and I was blown away. He just said, "No, I don't have a planner," and he was good at that. He was good at conducting his life without a planner. But I think for the most part, that's a very rare trait that somebody can actually do that. So I definitely want to.
You can ask yourself at the end of the week, did I accomplish what I wanted to accomplish? Not in a works mindset, but just in God called me to do this. How am I stewarding or managing his time well with accomplishing that? And just being able to see that. And if not, then how do I do that? How do I rearrange my schedule? Right. If it's in his mind and he can keep track and he's hitting everything he needs to do, great. Because I do know other people who don't like charts as much as I do, and they don't like schedules as much as I do. But flexibility, right? Because you always know something can come up. Yeah. But you're right. It brings that peace of mind that you're not worrying about it because you've set a slot for it. Yeah. Don't worry. We know you need to communicate. We know you need to do your newsletter. Don't worry. It's on Thursday at 4:00, exactly. And it gives you peace of mind.
Yeah. I was going to say something. I just kind of lost my train of thought. I can't remember. I apologize. It was something about, okay. So we're, the culture I'm in. You were here, you lived here. Setting priorities. When you're setting the priorities and you're setting your plans and schedules and stuff like that, you got to fit it to the culture as well. And because you're going to be so frustrated, because I've met so many missionaries that says, when I get to Honduras or when I get there, I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that. And it's like 6 months, on the field, it's like they're still on phase 1 when they thought they were going to be in phase 5. And see, that's just, you can't beat yourself up, because even though you may have the American mindset, you've got to work with locals for your ministry, with your ministry, that literally sometimes you're going to have to go at their pace. So, maybe you can share a little bit about that.
Yeah, pace is another thing. It goes a little bit to the short-term and long-term experience differences as well. You come on a short-term team, you build a house in a week. Like that doesn't happen when you live here. You can't keep that pace up the whole time you're there. some people are going to go to the mission field. You're going to go right into a ministry that's already functioning 24/7. Yeah, there's going to be plenty to do. Other people, and we stress this in missionary orientation, what I wish I would have known is if you think you're going to come and start something from scratch all by yourself, like even like a feeding center, like that's literally going to need to be built. So what are you going to do in the meantime? You have to have a schedule. Now it can consist of learning language. It can be studying the culture. It could be meeting people in the community who are key components. It could be seeing what the needs really are. But there's going to be a time of boredom. Like there's going to be a time of not having anything to do. So what are you going to do when you can't produce the results? One, you can change your expectations because, you can find out what will be realistic for me going in. You could talk to other missionaries and try to be realistic, but then in your day, you're going to have to be even more strategic because when you have more time, sometimes it's harder to plan out and map out what you're going to do.
Yeah. Well, anyway, I think we kind of covered a lot of things here for people to consider, about setting priorities. So, we just want to encourage whoever's watching this video, your relationship with God has to come first. And that's something that's always been inbred in me. Even as a business owner, I always just learned to put God first. I could not conduct my business without having God involved. So that's just always been ingrained in me and who I am. Don't beat yourself up if sometimes you miss. I miss. I make mistakes. There's days that I did not read the Bible, so I didn't crucify myself. But it's, the next day I encourage myself, look, stop looking at your cell phone before you go to prayer, and then all of a sudden you're caught up looking at all these short videos or whatever on Instagram, all this dumb stuff that we get caught up in. So then I have to train myself, don't take your cell phone to the prayer room or whatever, God has to come first in your relationship. And it's not about preparing messages. That is not spending time with God. I met a pastor here a couple of weeks ago. He came and did some training with us, some local pastors. And he said that, look, I read the Bible for my personal time. And out of that, God gives me messages for my people. I do not use my study time for messages as my personal time. It's just very important. So God's got to come first, and then you got to protect yourself, like you said, and then you have to protect your family. You have to protect your family. How would you want to come to the mission field? You destroy your family. Oh, but you save thousands. Doesn't make sense. So you send your family to hell. I'm not saying you're gonna, but I'm just saying you send your family to hell, but you go and save thousands. That does not make sense. Your family needs to come first. You got to ensure that your family gets into, in heaven. And you got to minister to them just as much as you want to minister to people in the mission field. And also, too, if your supporters don't understand that, you've got the wrong supporters and they got shallow thinking. I'm going to say that. If my supporters won't let me to spend time with my wife because they're so concerned about numbers, or if they won't let me spend the proper time with God, or they won't let me spend the proper time to take that 3 or 4 day vacation to get a break, then I've got the wrong supporters. And then I need to go out and work on getting some other ones. I'll just say that as bold as that. So, and I don't think that there's very many supporters that think that way. So anyway, what do you have to say to close out?
Just make sure to keep them in order. And like you're saying, when they get out of order, just wake up a new day and start again. Find resources, ask for help. If supporters don't understand you, find other like-minded missionaries who can encourage you to do that. Have somebody help you set the priorities. How do I do that? What does it look like? What do you do? It's never shameful to ask questions and get help. Right. Don't think that you have to be alone, or, maybe you need to talk to somebody and pray with somebody about people that are, judging you or coming down on you, and get some advice on how to talk to them. Or maybe you need a mediator. Maybe you do have to find supporters. Hopefully your supporters are supporting you as a person because they believe in you. They believe in who you are. They believe in what you're doing, and therefore they trust how you're going to use those and steward those resources. So I just, hope that it helps you and that you're able to see fruit from that time spent with the Lord.
Amen. Well, Marcy, thank you so much for coming on here. I appreciate you so much and your heart for missionaries. I believe that you blessed a lot of people today in just sharing with us about setting priorities. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
God bless you.